A cat stopped walking. 15 men froze mid-step behind him in 114-degree heat. In the middle of nowhere, Iraq, everything went silent. The cat stared at a pile of rubble 20 feet ahead, his ears flat, body rigid, tail straight, down like a steel rod. 3 seconds later, the ground exploded exactly where that rubble sat. No one touched it. No one triggered it. The blast just erupted on its own. A remotely detonated IED meant for the next person who walked past. If that cat had kept walking, 7 soldiers would have died in that exact spot. How did he know? How did a 4-month-old kitten with no training detect a bomb that $1 million equipment missed? Hit subscribe right now, because what you are about to hear will completely change how you think about animal instincts. Drop a comment telling me what city and country you are watching from. Hit that like button, because this story needs to be heard. This is the story of Radar and the 15 men who owe him their lives. Nobody wanted to be in Fallujah in August of 2007. The heat made your skin crack open like dried leather. The dust got into your lungs and stayed there for weeks, turning every breath into sandpaper. Every street corner felt like a trap waiting to spring. Every doorway could hide someone waiting to kill you. The air smelled like burning garbage, and fear, the kind of fear that sits in your stomach and never leaves, not even when you sleep, not even when you close your eyes and pretend you are somewhere else. Sergeant Marcus Chen had been there for months. His unit patrolled the same 6-block radius every single day. Same routes, same buildings, same faces watching from windows with expressions that gave away nothing. Same piles of trash that may or may not hide explosives. Same children who scattered when they saw Americans coming. Same shopkeepers who looked through them like they were ghosts. Everything repeated itself in an endless loop that made time feel meaningless. Routine is what kills you in a war zone. Routine makes you predictable. Predictable makes you dead. Chen knew this. Every sergeant knew this. They taught it in training. They repeated it in briefings. They wrote it on whiteboards in the command tent. But when you walk the same streets for 16 weeks straight, routine becomes unavoidable. Your brain starts filling in the blanks. You stop seeing what is actually there and start seeing what you expect to be there. That is when mistakes happen. That is when people die. On August 19th, Chen's unit was clearing an abandoned school on the eastern edge of their patrol zone. 3rd floor. Classrooms with desks still arranged in neat rows like kids might come back tomorrow morning for lessons. Textbooks in Arabic scattered across the floor. Pages torn and stained. A chalkboard with math problems half erased. The chalk dust still clinging to the green surface. Backpacks slumped in corners. A teacher's desk with papers still stacked on top. Lesson plans from months ago that no one would ever teach. That is when Chen heard it. A sound so faint he almost missed it. Under the constant noise of boots on broken tile and radio chatter, crackling in his ear, a sound that did not belong in a building that should have been empty. Crying. High-pitched. Desperate. The kind of crying that came from something small and alone and dying. He followed the sound down a hallway lined with lockers. The metal doors hung open, emptied long ago. The floor was covered in debris. Broken glass. Chunks of plaster. Shell casings. He stepped carefully, testing each footfall. Aware that every surface could hide something designed to kill. The crying got louder. More insistent. It was coming from a storage closet at the end of the hall. The door was jammed shut, warped in. Its frame from heat or an explosion or both. Chen kicked the door twice. The wood splintered around the lock. It swung open with a groan that echoed down the empty hallway. Inside, crammed in the corner behind a stack of moldy textbooks that smelled like rot and mildew, was a kitten. Orange and white, ribs showing through his fur like the bars of a tiny cage. Eyes crusted completely shut with infection, sealed with dried pus. His breathing was shallow and rapid. Every exhale sounded like a wheeze. The kitten was dying. Anyone could see that. Maybe he had a few hours left, maybe a day if he was incredibly lucky, but more likely he would be dead by sunset. Just another casualty of a war he had nothing to do with. Chen's training said leave it. His orders said do not touch anything. Every object in this country could be rigged. Every piece of trash could hide a trigger wire. They had lost 2 men in June because someone picked up a soccer ball that turned out to be packed with explosives. Command had sent out a memo after that. Do not touch. Do not move. Do not engage with anything that is not mission critical. A dying kitten was definitely not mission critical, but the kitten made a sound that did not belong in a war. A tiny mewing noise that reminded Chen of something other than death and sand, and a constant weight of fear. It reminded him of his sister's apartment back in San Francisco, of lazy Sunday mornings, of normalcy, of a world where things were allowed to be small and helpless without it being a death sentence. He picked the kitten up. It weighed nothing, just bones and matted fur and trembling fear. The tiny body shook in his hands like it might fall apart. Chen could feel the heartbeat racing against his palm, frantic and irregular. Private Jackson saw him do it. Jackson was 19 years old, fresh out of basic training in Georgia. Still, believed rules mattered more than context. Still thought the Army worked the way the manual said it worked. He had been in country for 6 weeks and had not yet learned that out here everything was negotiable except survival. Jackson said, "Sir, you cannot bring that back to base. Regulations specifically prohibit animals. It is a health risk. Command will make you dump it outside the wire. You will get written up, maybe worse." Chen looked at the kitten shaking in his hands. He looked at Jackson's young face, still soft with certainty. He said, "Then I guess I will get written up." He tucked the kitten inside his vest, felt the tiny heartbeat against his chest, felt something other than the constant dread he had been carrying for 16 weeks straight. Back at base, Chen hid the kitten in an empty supply crate behind the latrines, the one place on the entire forward operating base where people did not linger or ask questions. He brought the kitten water in a canteen cup, brought him scraps of chicken from meals, the stringy overcooked pieces no one else wanted, cleaned his infected eyes with the corner of his undershirt dipped in bottled water, working gently to dissolve the crust without hurting him. The kitten barely moved during any of this, just lay there accepting help like he had given up fighting. The kitten should have died. Everything in that country died if it was not supposed to be there. Plants died. Trees died. Hope died. A half-starved kitten with a raging infection should have been dead within 24 hours. But the kitten did not die. In 3 days his eyes opened, bright green, clear, alert. In a week, he was walking on shaky legs, exploring the small space inside the crate. In 2 weeks, he was playing with a piece of paracord Chen had tied to a tent stake, pouncing on it like it was prey. The other men found out. You cannot hide anything on a forward operating base smaller than a football field where everyone knows everyone's business and secrets last about as long as ice in the sun. Some were angry. Specialist Rodriguez said it was disrespectful to waste resources on an animal when soldiers were rationing baby wipes and toilet paper, said it showed poor judgment, said Chen was putting his feelings above the mission. Others did not care one way or another. Corporal Williams said the cat was the only living thing on base that was not actively trying to kill them, so let the sergeant have his pet if it helped him cope. Said everyone had their own way of dealing with this place and a cat was harmless compared to some of the things people did. But Private Mendez said something that made everyone stop talking and start paying attention. He said, "Have you noticed? The cat does not like certain areas. Have you seen how he acts near the western fence line? He won't go near it. Fights like crazy if you try to carry him that direction." Chen had noticed. The kitten would walk anywhere on base except near the western perimeter fence. Every time Chen carried him in that direction, the kitten would start squirming and hissing and clawing to get away, his whole body going rigid with panic. Chen thought it was random at first. Cats do not like things for no reason all the time. Maybe a dog had lived there once. Maybe the smell of diesel from the generators bothered him. Maybe he just did not like that part of the base. Animals had preferences. It did not mean anything. Then on September 3rd, an explosive ordnance disposal team found an IED buried 15 feet outside that exact fence line, right where the kitten refused to go, right where his panic seemed most intense. The EOD team said the device had been there at least 2 weeks, maybe longer. Motion triggered. packed with enough explosive to take out anyone within a 30-foot radius. If anyone had walked patrol along that fence, if anyone had done a perimeter check on foot instead of from the tower, it would have detonated and killed them instantly. No one had walked patrol there because Chen had started unconsciously avoiding that section, because the kitten hated it, because something in Chen's brain had connected the cat's behavior to a feeling of unease. Coincidence, everyone said. Lucky guess. Cats have sensitive hearing. Maybe he heard something in the ground we did not. Maybe he smelled the explosive material. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe we are seeing patterns where none exist because we are desperate for something to make sense. In a place where nothing makes sense. Then it happened again. September 9th, morning patrol. The unit was walking a route they had walked 200 times before. Residential street. Bombed-out cars stripped to their frames. Walls with bullet holes that told stories no one wanted to hear. The same street they walked every other day. The street that felt safe because nothing had ever happened there. That was the dangerous thinking. That was the routine talking. The kitten was with them. Chen had given up trying to hide him. Command had not said anything official, so Chen took that silence as tacit permission. The cat had become something of a mascot. Men who had been angry about him now stopped to scratch his ears before patrols. Even Rodriguez had softened, sneaking him bits of tuna from MRE packets. The kitten walked ahead of the formation, confident now, healthy. His orange fur bright against the gray dust that covered everything. Then 20 feet ahead. The kitten stopped, not slowed down, not paused, stopped, completely, like he had hit an invisible wall. His whole body went rigid, tail down, ears flat, staring at a pile of rubble that looked exactly like every other pile of rubble. On every other street. Chen stopped. The whole unit stopped behind him. 15 men standing in the middle of a street in full sun, weapons ready, watching a cat. Chen said, "Hold position." Nobody moved. Nobody questioned it. They had all heard about the fence line. They had all seen how the cat acted when something was wrong. Then the pile exploded. No one was near it. No one had touched it. No one had done anything. Just a massive eruption of fire and dirt and shrapnel. A roar that turned the world into noise and chaos. The blast was so close it knocked Chen backward off his feet. Dust filled his mouth and nose. His ears rang so loud he could not hear anything else, just a high-pitched whine that drowned out everything. When the smoke cleared, there was a crater where the rubble had been, 3 feet deep, 10 feet across. Jagged metal fragments embedded in the walls on both sides of the street. If they had kept walking, if that cat had not stopped, 7 men would have been inside the kill radius. 7 men would have been shredded by the blast. 7 families would have gotten the visit from the casualty assistance officer. 7 funerals. 7 folded flags. Chen looked down. The kitten was sitting calmly now, licking his paw like nothing had happened. Like he had not just saved 7 lives by doing something impossible. That is when someone started calling him Radar. That is when Chen realized this was not coincidence. That is when command found out, and everything changed. Captain Alvarez called Chen into his office 2 hours after the explosion. Alvarez was career Army, 22 years of service, silver hair cut military short, scars on his hands from Iraq, Afghanistan, places he would not name because they were still classified. He had the look of a man who had seen everything and believed in nothing except what he could verify himself. He gestured for Chen to sit. Chen stayed standing. Alvarez said, "I heard about the cat. I heard what happened on patrol today. I heard the men are calling him Radar now. I heard some of them think he is detecting explosives." Chen said nothing. He knew when a superior officer was working up to something. Alvarez leaned back in his chair. He said, "I also heard you have been bringing the cat on patrols for 2 weeks now. That you have been, and I quote, letting him lead the formation." Chen felt his jaw tighten. He said, "Sir, that is not accurate. I have not been letting him lead. He just walks ahead sometimes." Alvarez raised an eyebrow. He said, "And when he stops, you stop. When he refuses to go somewhere, you avoid that area. Is that not what happened today?" Chen wanted to argue, but he could not because it was true. He said, "Sir, if this is about regulations, I can rehome him off base. There are locals who would take him. I will find someone tomorrow." Alvarez shook his head slowly. He said, "I do not care about the cat being here. Officially I should, but I do not. What I care about is what happens if you start relying on him. What I care about is tactical decision-making, being influenced by animal behavior instead of training and equipment." Chen did not understand where this was going. Alvarez continued. He said, "You are a good sergeant. You keep your men alive. You follow procedure. You do not take unnecessary risks. But if you start thinking that cat is some kind of magic detector, if you start trusting his behavior over your training, you are going to get someone killed. Maybe not today, maybe not next week, but eventually." Chen felt anger rising in his chest. He said, "That cat has saved lives twice, sir. Documented saves, the fence line-eyed, today's blast. Those are facts." Alvarez leaned forward, his voice dropping lower. He said, "Those are coincidences, explainable coincidences. Cats have acute hearing. They can detect vibrations humans cannot. They react to environmental stimuli we do not consciously register. But they are not bomb detectors. They do not have supernatural powers. They do not have training. If you start trusting animal behavior over equipment that cost millions to develop and procedure that took decades to refine, you are making a fatal mistake." Chen said nothing. His hands were clenched at his sides. Alvarez stood up. He walked around the desk. He said, "I am not ordering you to get rid of the cat. I am not even ordering you to stop bringing him on patrol. What I am ordering you to do is this: you follow protocol. You trust your training. You use your equipment. You make decisions based on intelligence and tactical assessment, not on whether a pet acts nervous. Understood?" Chen said, "Understood, sir." But he did not mean it, because he had seen what he had seen, because numbers do not lie, because to times might be coincidence, but his gut told him it was something else. Alvarez must have seen it in his face. He said, "Sergeant, I have been doing this for over 2 decades. I have seen men develop superstitions, lucky coins, prayer rituals, specific socks they wear on patrol, and I have seen what happens when those superstitions fail, when the coin does not save them, when the prayer does not stop the bullet, when the lucky socks do not prevent them from stepping on an IED. They fall apart because they put their faith in something that was never real. Do not do that with this cat." Chen left the office. He went back to his rack. He sat there in the dark. The kitten was curled up on his pillow, sleeping peacefully. Chen watched him breathe, watched his whiskers twitch with dreams. He thought about what Alvarez said. He thought about coincidence versus pattern. He thought about the fact that in 4 months of patrols, they had encountered 17 IEDs and suffered 3 casualties. He thought about the fact that, in the 2 weeks since the cat started coming on patrol, they had avoided the devices without a single injury. He thought about statistics and probability and the human need to find meaning in chaos. But 2 days later, radar did it again. September 14th, night patrol. Temperature finally below 90 degrees. The kind of night that almost felt normal if you did not think too hard about where you were or what you were doing. Chen's unit was checking an abandoned apartment complex on the north side of their sector. For stories, every window broken out, graffiti in Arabic covering the walls, some of it political slogans, some of it just names and dates. The building had been cleared 3 times before. It was on the low priority list. Routine check. In and out. Radar was in Chen's vest. He had started carrying the cat on every patrol now. Regardless of what Alvarez said, no one had officially told him to stop. The men had stopped pretending it was about regulations or appropriateness. They wanted the cat there. Some of them had started touching his head before missions. Like a ritual. Chen told himself it was just for morale. He told himself he was not relying on the cat. He told himself he was following all proper protocols. He was lying to himself, and he knew it. They climbed to the 2nd floor. The stairs were concrete, cracked and crumbling. Some steps were missing chunks, exposing rusted rebar underneath. Chen tested each one before putting his full weight on it. The building creaked and groaned around them, Halfway up, radar started moving inside the vest. Not his usual shifting to get comfortable, aggressive movement, squirming, clawing at the fabric from the inside. Chen stopped. He said, "Hold." The unit stopped. Jackson was right behind him. He whispered, "What is it?" Chen did not answer. He was watching the cat. Radar pushed his head out of the top of the vest. His pupils were huge, ears pinned flat against his skull. He was staring down the hallway to the right. The hallway they were supposed to clear next. The hallway that looked exactly like every other hallway in every other abandoned building. Chen felt the cat's heart racing against his chest, felt the tiny body vibrating with tension. Radar made a sound Chen had never heard before. Low, guttural, almost a growl. Chen pulled the cat out of his vest, held him at arm's length. Radar was staring at the hallway, his whole body rigid, every muscle locked. Chen looked at Williams. He said, "Get EOD up here." Williams stared at him. He said, "Sarge, we have not seen anything. Sensors are clean." Chen said, "Get EOD up here now." It took 20 minutes for the explosive ordnance disposal team to arrive. 20 minutes of standing on those stairs, waiting, weapons ready, watching a hallway where nothing moved. Rodriguez whispered, "This is crazy. We are trusting a cat." Mendez whispered back, "Shut up, just shut up." The EOD tech arrived with his robot, a small tracked vehicle with a camera and mechanical arm. He sent it down the hallway. The camera feed showed on a tablet screen. Empty hallway, debris on the floor, doors hanging open. The robot reached the end of the hall. The tech started to turn it around. Then the camera caught something. A wire, thin, almost invisible, stretched across the hallway at ankle height. The tech zoomed in, followed the wire with the camera. It led into a room on the left. The tech sent the robot into the room. The camera showed what was inside. 50 pounds of homemade explosive. Ball bearings packed around it. A pressure trigger connected to the wire. A backup timer set to detonate in 40 minutes. The tech looked at Chen. He said, "If you had walked down that hallway, the wire would have triggered the primary charge. If you had somehow missed the wire, the timer would have detonated while you were clearing rooms. Either way, everyone in this building would be dead right now." "How did you know?" Chen looked down at radar. The cat had calmed down now that they were away from the hallway. He was cleaning his face with his paw. Chen said, "Lucky guess. The tech did not buy it. Nobody bought it." Word spread fast on a base that small. By morning, everyone knew. The cat had done it again. 3 times now. 3 documented saves. 3 times where following the cat's behavior had prevented casualties. The numbers were becoming impossible to ignore. Coincidence was no longer a satisfactory explanation. That is when things got complicated. That is when people started taking sides. That is when Chen had to make a choice that would define everything that came after. The unit split into 2 camps. Half the men believed radar was detecting explosives through some combination of heightened senses. An animal instinct. They wanted him on every patrol. They started refusing to leave the wire without him. They treated him like essential equipment. The other half thought it was dangerous superstition. They argued that relying on a cat was going to make people careless, make them stop trusting their training and technology. Rodriguez was the loudest voice in the second camp. He said, "The moment we stop thinking for ourselves and start following an animal is the moment we die." Chen was caught in the middle. He could not deny what he had seen. 3 saves. 3 times where the cat had detected something their equipment missed. But he also could not ignore Alvarez's warning. He could not ignore the fact that superstition kills soldiers just as surely as explosives do. He started having nightmares about it. Dreams where he followed the cat into a trap. Dreams where the cat led them all into a kill zone. Dreams where he had to choose between trusting his training or trusting an animal. September 23rd, the decision got made for him. Command sent down new orders. They were expanding patrol routes, pushing into areas that had not been cleared in months, high-risk areas. Chen's unit was assigned to a neighborhood on the eastern edge of Fallujah. Intelligence said it was a staging area for insurgents. Satellite imagery showed suspicious activity. Radio chatter suggested weapons caches. It was going to be dangerous. The night before the patrol, Williams came to Chen's rack. He sat down. He said, "Are you bringing radar tomorrow?" Chen said, "I have not decided." Williams said, "The men want him there. Half of them have already said they are not going without him." Chen rubbed his face. He said, "That is exactly the problem. We are supposed to be trained soldiers. We are supposed to follow procedure. We are not supposed to need a cat to feel safe." Williams was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "With all due respect, Sarge, I do not care what we are supposed to do. I care about coming home, and that cat has kept us alive 3 times. I will take whatever advantage I can get." Chen brought radar on the patrol. He told himself it was for morale. He told himself it changed nothing about how he would make tactical decisions. He told himself he was still following proper protocol. The patrol left at dawn. 12 men. Full combat load. Enough ammunition and water for 8 hours. They moved through streets that felt wrong from the first step to quiet. No people, no traffic, no children playing, just empty buildings and the constant feeling of being watched. 2 hours in, they reached the target neighborhood. 3-story buildings packed tight together. Narrow alleys between them. Laundry still hanging on lines between balconies, sun-bleached and forgotten. The point man moved forward. Chen was 5th in the formation. Radar was in his vest, alert, but calm. They cleared the first building. Empty. Cleared the second. Empty. Moved toward the third. That is when radar started going crazy. Not nervous, not alert. Absolutely frantic. Clawing, screaming. Thrashing so hard Chen had to grip him with both hands to keep him from escaping. The cat was making sounds Chen did not know cats could make. Sounds of pure terror. Chen stopped. He said, "Hold." But this time, Jackson did not hold. Jackson kept moving forward. He said, "It is just a cat. We have a mission. We have intel. We are not stopping because a pet is scared." Chen said, "Private, I gave you an order." Jackson turned around. His face was red. He said, "And I am tired of following orders that come from an animal. We have jobs to do. We have actual intelligence. We are not children who need a security blanket." He started moving again. 3 other men followed him. The unit was splitting, half listening to Chen, half following Jackson. Chen had seconds to decide. Follow proper procedure and push forward with the mission, or trust the cat and call it off. Trust the intel and the mission briefing and the satellite imagery, or trust 3 previous incidents that defied explanation. He looked at radar. The cat was trembling so hard his whole body shook, eyes wild, claws out, every instinct screaming danger. Chen made his choice. He said, "Everyone fall back. Now, this is not a request." Jackson stopped. He said, "You are calling off a mission because of a cat. You are going to have to explain this to command. You are going to have to justify this." Chen said, "I will deal with command. Right now, we are leaving. Move." Half the unit moved back immediately. Jackson and his 3 followers hesitated. Then they followed. But Chen could see the anger in their body language. They thought he was a coward. They thought he had lost his nerve. They moved back to blocks, set up in a defensive position in an empty building. Chen called it into base, reported they were holding position. Did not mention why. 20 minutes later, the entire target neighborhood exploded. Not one device. Multiple devices. Coordinated detonations. Every building they were supposed to clear went up simultaneously. The blast was so massive they felt it 2 blocks away. The shockwave rattled windows. Dust rained from the ceiling. When the smoke cleared, there was nothing left, just rubble, just craters, just destruction. If they had been in those buildings, none of them would have survived. Not one. 12 men. 12 body bags. 12 families destroyed. The explosive ordnance team investigated later. They found evidence of a complex ambush. Insurgents had wired the entire neighborhood. They were waiting for American forces to enter. They had spotters on rooftops. They were watching. The moment the unit entered the kill zone, they would have detonated everything. Chen saved 12 lives that day by trusting a cat over mission orders. Jackson never apologized, but he stopped arguing. Command did not reprimand Chen. They could not. The evidence was undeniable. For times now, for saves, the statistical probability of coincidence was approaching zero. Alvarez called Chen back to his office. He looked older than he had 2 weeks ago. He said, "I do not know what to tell you. Sergeant, I do not know how to explain what that cat does. I do not know if it is hearing or smell or some sixth sense we do not understand. But I cannot argue with results." Chen said, "So what now?" Alvarez was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "You keep doing what you are doing. You keep your men alive. You trust your training and your equipment. And if that cat tells you something is wrong, you listen. But you never forget that he is still just a cat. He is not infallible. He is not magic. One day he might be wrong. One day you might follow him into danger instead of away from it. You need to be ready for that." Chen brought radar on every patrol after that. The cat became officially recognized, not in paperwork, not in reports, but in practice. The men treated him like equipment, essential equipment. They would not leave without him. Other units heard about it, started asking if they could borrow him. Chen always said no. Radar stayed with his unit, the unit he had saved for times. They never found out how he did it. Veterinarians examined him. Nothing special, just a normal cat. No extraordinary hearing, no unusual sensitivity. Just a regular orange and white cat who somehow detected danger that million-dollar equipment could not. Scientists would probably say it was a combination of factors: vibrations in the ground, chemical signatures in the air, subtle environmental cues humans miss. But none of that explains the coordination. None of that explains the precision. None of that explains how a 4-month-old kitten knew exactly where not to go. Chen and his unit finished their deployment in December. All 12 men came home alive. Not a single casualty. In a unit that operated in one of the most dangerous areas of Iraq during one of the most violent periods of the war, they suffered 0 deaths. The statistical anomaly was so significant that military analysts studied their patrol reports, looking for tactical innovations they could replicate. They found nothing except a note that appeared in several reports. Cat displayed unusual behavior. Recommend caution. Proceeding with alternate route. Chen brought radar home to California. The paperwork took 3 months. The flight cost $2,000. But he did it. Radar lives with Chen in San Francisco now. He is 6 years old. He sleeps on Chen's bed. He plays with toy mice. He sits in windows watching birds. He is just a normal house cat who happens to have saved 12 lives in a war zone. Through means no one can adequately explain. The men from that unit stay in touch. They have a group chat. They send pictures of their families, their kids, their normal lives that they get to live because a cat stopped walking one day in August. Some of them have tried to explain it to people who were not there. Tried to describe what it was like to trust your life to an animal. They always fail. It sounds crazy when you say it out loud. It sounds like superstition, like magical thinking, like the kind of story that cannot possibly be true. But it is true. Chen has the patrol reports. He has the EOD documentation. He has 12 men who will swear under oath that a cat saved their lives multiple times. He also has the question that keeps him up some nights. Was Alvarez right? Was it really just coincidence elevated to pattern because they wanted to believe? Or was it something else, something we do not have words for? Something that exists in the space between what we can measure and what we know to be real? Chen does not have an answer. He just has a cat who sometimes stares at corners of rooms where nothing is visible. A cat who refuses to go into certain spaces for no apparent reason. A cat who survived a war that killed thousands. Maybe it was luck. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe it was something else entirely. The only thing Chen knows for certain is this. He is alive. His men are alive. And sometimes the difference between living and dying comes down to whether you are willing to trust something you cannot explain. Whether you are willing to stop walking when a cat stops walking. Whether you are willing to believe that intelligence comes in forms we have not learned to recognize yet. Was Chen right to trust radar? Or did he just get lucky for times and mistake survival for validation? You tell me.